Okay, so you want to get a handle on cloud computing, and you sent us some of the Microsoft Azure Fundamentals training stuff. Yeah.
Mhm.
So, um, what we're going to try to do today is like pull out the really important concepts.
Yeah.
Like, what is the cloud even, how is it deployed? And like, who's responsible for what?
Right, right.
And we want to make this like super clear and useful for you right away,
Absolutely.
no matter what your background is with tech.
Yeah, for sure.
So think of this as your like, fast track to understanding the cloud.
I like that.
It's the first stop on this whole learning path that we're going to be doing.
Cool.
We're also going to be looking at Azure architecture and services,
Okay.
and then later Azure management and governance.
Great. So like a whole series.
Yeah, a whole series. And we're going to like assume, a little bit about IT,
Basic stuff. Yeah.
basic stuff. Yeah. So let's dive in.
Sounds good.
So this foundational material, from what I've seen, it's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is kind of the core, the heart of cloud computing.
Yeah.
We really want to just, simplify and clarify what it is,
Right.
explore how it's deployed in different ways,
Okay.
and nail down this idea of shared responsibility, which is crucial in the cloud.
Okay, so cloud computing,
Yeah.
when we just like strip it all back,
Yeah.
what is the core idea here that we need to like,
Okay, so
as-
at its core, cloud computing is all about accessing computing resources over the internet on demand from a provider.
okay.
So things like servers, storage software,
All right.
instead of having to have your own physical infrastructure, in your own data center,
Yeah.
you're basically tapping into a provider's infrastructure.
Okay.
And what's really fascinating about this is that this shift to the cloud has really accelerated innovation across industries.
Okay. How so?
Well, because it allows even small startups or individuals
Right. Got it.
to access the same kind of enterprise level technology.
So it's kind of like instead of buying the whole toolbox, you're just renting the specific tools you need.
Yeah, exactly. A great analogy.
Okay.
So you only pay for what you use.
Right. That seems like it would make sense from a cost perspective.
Absolutely. Reduced upfront investment is a huge advantage,
Okay.
but you also get incredible flexibility.
All right.
So let's say you suddenly need more processing power for a project.
Okay.
You can usually scale up almost instantly in the cloud.
Wow.
And if you need less, you can scale down just as easily and save money.
Right.
And on top of that, the cloud provider takes care of a lot of the, heavy lifting,
Okay.
like maintenance upgrades, security.
Right.
So that frees you up to focus on your core business activities.
That makes sense. So we've got this basic idea and why it's beneficial.
Right.
But the material mentions like different ways that these cloud services are offered.
Yeah.
Can you kind of like break those down?
Yeah, so we generally categorize cloud services into three main types.
Okay.
Infrastructure as a service, or IA, platform as a service, or PI,
Uh-huh.
and software as a service, or SaaS.
Okay, so let's start with IS.
Right.
What's like the essential thing to know about that?
Okay, so with ISAs, you're essentially renting the foundational IT infrastructure from the provider.
Okay.
It's things like virtual machines, storage networks.
Okay.
And you have a lot of control over these resources.
Okay.
But you are also responsible for managing things like the operating system and the applications that you run on them.
Okay, I see.
A real-world example of ISS might be a company hosting their own web server on a virtual machine that they're renting from a cloud provider.
So pay us, that's like the next level up then in terms of what's managed for you.
Exactly. Payas provides a complete platform.
Okay.
So both the hardware and the software that you need
Okay.
for developing, running, and managing applications.
Okay.
And you don't have to worry about managing the underlying infrastructure.
Okay.
The provider takes care of all of that server storage operating systems.
Makes sense.
A good example of this would be a development team using a platform like Heroku to deploy their code
Okay.
without having to manage any servers themselves.
And say that's the one that's like the most end user focused, right?
Yeah, you got it. SaaS delivers software applications over the internet,
Okay.
typically on a subscription basis.
All right.
And all you have to do is access and use the application.
Okay.
The provider handles absolutely everything else.
Cool.
Think of your email provider like Gmail.
Okay.
That's a prime example of SaaS.
It is.
It's actually pretty interesting to consider how many aspects of our daily lives now rely on SaaS without us even realizing it.
It's true. So that breakdown AS PASAS, that's really helpful.
Good. I'm glad.
Like it clarifies the different levels of management.
Right.
Now, one thing that seems super important is this idea of shared responsibility.
Yes, this is critical.
What does that actually mean for someone using the cloud?
Okay, so while the cloud provider is responsible for the security of the cloud infrastructure itself,
Okay.
You, the user, are responsible for security within the cloud.
Uh-huh.
And where that line is drawn actually depends on which service model you're using.
Okay.
For example, with IS, you have more security responsibilities for your virtual machines and your data. Right.
Than you would with SaaS, where the provider handles most of that for you.
I see.
So understanding this division of responsibility is key to avoiding potential security issues down the road.
So even though you're using this like massive infrastructure that someone else is providing,
Right.
you still have a really significant role in keeping your own stuff safe.
Exactly. It's a partnership.
Okay.
And having that clarity on who is responsible for what is really paramount for a secure cloud experience.
That makes sense. Okay, so we've covered a lot.
Yeah.
We talked about what cloud computing is, like the core benefits.
Right.
Like saving money and being more agile.
Yeah.
We talked about those different service models, IaaS, PaaS, SaaS.
The big three.
The big three, yeah. And that really important concept of shared responsibility.
Crucial.
Yeah, and this all comes from that Microsoft Azure Fundamentals training.
Yeah. Good foundation.
Yeah, so it's a really solid base for going deeper into things like Azure architecture, Azure services management, governance.
And we're going to do that in some upcoming deep dives, so stay tuned for those.
Looking forward to it.
But for now, thinking about these fundamental ideas that we've talked about, what are some of the potential uses or applications of cloud computing that seem like relevant or interesting to you in your own work or your own personal projects?
Yeah, that's a great question.
It is. It's something to think about as we kind of wrap up this first look at Cloud Fundamentals.
Awesome.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks, everyone.